In this lesson, I'm going to be taking you through the step-by-step process for setting up your Performance Max campaign. And what I will be doing here is I will be showing you the option for a lead generation business and also an e-commerce business. And obviously for e-com, it'll mean also adding in your shopping feed. Now, before we get into this process, what I would recommend is that you do have your keyword research ready and also your ad copy. And then you've also got your images and YouTube links. And in your setup guide, I've got in here the landscape and square sizes that you need, along with the PX sizes and also the file types. And if you are an e-commerce brand and you're wanting to use Performance Max to connect to your shopping feed, you do need to make sure that you've already got your shopping feed connected into your Google Ads. And if you go to this link in through here, it takes you through the steps of connecting Google to your e-commerce store, and you can follow the steps through there. But with all of that said, let's now jump into Google Ads so I can show you this step-by-step process. Where you want to be going in from here is you want to go, firstly, select new campaign. Now for Performance Max, remember that it has a built-in smart bidding strategy. So you can either do maximize conversion value or maximize conversions. And eventually there will also be a profit-based bidding. Now, because it's locked into one of those two, I do really recommend that you choose either leads or sales. Sales if you're e-commerce, leads if you're lead generation or a service business. I'm going to pick leads, but remember, I am going to go back and show you how to do the sales option. And then from there, you want to select your conversion goals. Now, let's just say, for example, you don't want this conversion action to be selected. What you could do is you could remove it. Now, the one thing I want to stress there is that this does not remove the goal from your account. It just means that Google is not going to be using that goal for its bidding. So it won't be factoring in any removed goals. It only factors in the goals that you've left selected for maximize conversions or maximize conversion value. Then go through and click continue, and we want to select Performance Max. What will happen here, this is where you see two different options. If you do not have a shopping feed connected, you'll see where you can enter in the final URL. But if you do have a shopping feed connected, what will happen in through here, we've selected Performance Max and we've selected sales. You've got a section in here where you can add in your merchant center. So first in here, we'll set up the URL, but that's giving you both examples. And then you need to add in a campaign name. Now, when it comes to campaign names, as I always say, what you want to do is you want to have a name that makes sense to you so that when you're optimizing further down the track, you know exactly what that campaign is about. So we're just going to call this one leads. PMax. For e-commerce brands, what I would generally do in through here is I would name the product category, or if it was for the whole store, we'd say something like all, just so you know exactly what you're looking at targeting there. Then you go through, click continue. Now these steps are going to be the same, whether it's for lead gen or whether it's for e-commerce. When it comes to bidding, as I said, you can only choose conversions or conversion value. For lead generation or service, we would go conversions. For e-com, we would go conversion value. For lead generation, you can also do conversion value if you are using a system where you input your leads back into Google Ads, especially if you're using a third-party CRM, something like HubSpot or something like Salesforce. You can definitely use conversion value, but for this one, we're just going to go conversions. Whether you choose conversions or conversion value, I would not start with a target. So for conversions, it's going to be target CPA. For conversion value, it's going to be target ROAS. And the reason for why I don't do that, remember, Performance Max campaigns are all about driving extra conversions. Google will recommend to set a target. I don't recommend. The reason being is because once you set that target, you're telling Google that's what you want to achieve. And many times we've seen with Performance Max is that over the first 6 months, you can be in a really steep conversion increase. So we've had some campaigns which have gone from 5 conversions, 20 conversions, 40 conversions, and then up to over 100 conversions. And if we had to set a target CPA or a target ROAS, it would have limited that spend. So you don't want to be setting a target until you're seeing a stabilization of your results. One of the things, which is a common thing that I do, is that I will set the Performance Max campaign to target for only new customers. Because this is a training account, I don't have a big enough audience because you need to have people over 1,000. So what I would do through there is that I would usually set it up to bid for new customers. But if you don't want to do that, you can just leave that blank. Then you go through to next. This is where you need to start targeting your locations. So let's just say we want to go for Australia. We would add that in through there. But if you wanted to add in extra countries, it's just a matter of typing these in. So but let's just keep that for Australia. Now, when it comes to automatically created assets. So with Performance Max, as a starting point, you need to understand that you don't have full control. So if you are in an industry and you need full control over your ad copy, Performance Max is probably not going to be something that I'd recommend. And the reason being is because it is adding more and more automated text. And basically that's coming from what Google is picking up from the user. The only other thing that you may want to add in here is if you go down to more settings for Performance Max, I'll add in my own brand as a brand exclusion. If you don't have any brand lists, all you need to do is you just go new brand list, write the name in here, and then it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for that to come through. So what that does do is that we're then stopping the Performance Max spending on our internal brand. And that's generally the only optimizations that I'll add in there. The only other one that you may want to add in is when it comes to the URL, if you want to block out any URL exclusions. So what this could be is, especially if you're on e-commerce and you are using a Performance Max campaign and you've got one for women's apparel and one for men's apparel, what you may want to do is you may want to create some rules that make sure that the women's campaign only goes to women's clothes, men's campaign only goes to men's clothes. And so that's the way that we would go through and add in those exclusions. Once you're happy with all those settings, go through to next. Now, Google will recommend to go through this asset generation. Generally, I skip this, and the reason being is because we start our Performance Max campaign as a secondary campaign, so we've already got data on our best performing headlines and ad copies. With the asset group name, what I would just do there as well, I've just put in leads or sales, but generally think of your asset group names. You want to be calling your asset group names like your ad group names, remembering so that when we're optimizing the account, we know really, really quickly what this asset group is targeting. Now, what I've done here, I've just added in a couple of headlines and long headlines. I would recommend more, but I'm just doing this just to show you from here. Once again, generally with Performance Max, I've already run some search and shopping campaigns, so I've got an idea of what converts for my business. Then you want to go through and add some images. With this, you can update these through going to the asset library. We've already got some selected in through here, so I'll just select a couple. We've already got our logos added. Once again, if you need to, you can upload some logos by using this upload function. With videos, I do recommend to add some, and what we've got some in here, we've got some from our YouTube channel. And we just go through and click save. Now, when it comes to signals, the one thing I want to really reinforce is that with the signals, this isn't heavy targeting. So it's not like an exact match keyword where it's heavily targeted. They help guide who sees your ads on Google search and YouTube. So think of it that Google just adds these as recommendations. But I do recommend to add some. Now, I've just added a couple in here, but I would recommend that you add up to around about 15 to start. Then you want to add in some different audience signals. Now, one thing I do recommend with the audience signals is that I would generally use my data that we've got in there. And this just helps to sort of ground. Once again, Google's going to be going beyond these selections, but it gives Google some extra data about the type of people that convert. Other thing that you can do from here is if you feel that you know some interests that would be relevant, if you go to your search campaign, you can see some audiences that have been converting well, you can add them in there. The one thing I just want to make clear as well is that once again, Google just takes these as recommendations. It will go beyond your suggestions. Generally, I won't add in any demographics unless you're dealing with a product that you know is not relevant for that age bracket. So sometimes you may want to, increase the age bracket a little bit and target it, say, between like 25 or 54. Then you can add in an audience name. Once again, this is just so you can use it in the future so you know how you've set up that targeting. Go to next. Google will give you a recommended budget, but let's just say we've already set it and we know that we want to be spending $30. So we change that to $30, go through and click next. And then what Google will do from here is it'll see is if there's any issues that you need to fix. So you can see there's issues and there's recommendations. The issues are something that we need to fix. So we'll go through to here and it's saying we need to add in another description. And now that we've added that in, we can go back to the summary and our campaign is ready to publish. The one thing I do want to show you, if you're running Performance Max for an e-commerce brand, the one thing that I would do is that once you've set up your initial asset group and your multiple asset groups, you need to make sure that you're going through and refining your listing groups. Now, the benefit of refining your listing groups is what you can then do is that you can, let's just say you've got some different product categories and you're wanting to target specific product categories for different asset groups. What you can do is this is where you select the product. So depending on how you've set up your feed, you could do this by brand, you could do this by your product type, or you could do this by the individual item IDs. It's really going to come down to how you've set your feed. But the benefit for this is that way, once you've got your campaign running, is that you can see the data by the different audience groups. And what we've got here is we've got 3 core products and we're able to see the different data of what's happening in our Performance Max campaigns. And in the setup guide, I've also shown it in through here is that basically once your campaign is set up, you're then able to go into the asset group section and click on the blue little plus sign, and that's where you set up your new asset groups. And you can also add in those refinements by the subdivision. So once again, what you do is you go into asset groups, you can add in a new asset group, and then once you've got that asset group set up, you can then go through and adjust your listing groups by adding in this subdivision. And that's the process you use to set up your Performance Max campaigns.